Prudence Westfield stood in her Seattle kitchen, the morning sun casting a soft glow across the marble countertops. Her husband Mark slammed his coffee mug down, his voice tight with irritation. "If you can't trust me with a simple investment, maybe we have bigger problems." He grabbed his jacket and stormed out, the front door snapping shut. It was a security alert. She tapped the notification and watched as footage from the night before loaded. There he was, Mark, at 4:13 a.m., standing in her home office, rifling through her banking documents with deliberate care. Her voice came through steady. "I build safety nets for a living, but I never imagined I'd need one for my own marriage." Flash to a law office. A folder slams shut. A voice states, "This is evidence of fraud and adultery." Prudence replies, "I invest in truth." Prudence Westfield was the kind of woman who read the fine print twice. At 43, she had built a sterling career as a risk management consultant, helping insurance companies anticipate worst-case scenarios before they exploded into six-figure disasters. Her colleagues called her Prudence the Preeminent. It was a skill honed not just by experience, but by upbringing. Her childhood had been shaped by the 2008 financial crash, which destroyed her father's career and nearly unraveled her parents' 30-year marriage. Her mother's voice still echoed in her mind. "Always have your own safety net." From that point forward, Prudence became a woman who prepared. She moved through life with methodical precision, backing up her files, diversifying her accounts, never sharing more than necessary. Emotionally and financially, she remained independent. That was how she liked it. Controlled, predictable. She met Mark Westfield at a financial technology conference in San Francisco. He was charismatic, sharp, and confident without arrogance. A consultant like her, but in a different niche. Mark worked in digital finance and software. He admired her strategic mind and told her so within an hour of meeting. They married a year later. Neither wanted children, and both were fully invested in careers and comfort. Over the next 15 years, they built a life that was stable, if not exactly romantic. They owned a sleek home in Seattle, took annual vacations, and managed their finances like a well-balanced portfolio. For years, it worked. Prudence managed the long-term strategies, investments, retirement, emergency funds. Mark handled the day-to-day logistics, household expenses, tech upgrades, bill payments. They had separate personal accounts and a few joint ones for shared expenses. It was a system of mutual respect and boundaries. They didn't need constant passion. They needed security. But 6 months ago, something shifted. Mark became guarded, his once thumper habits clouded by secrecy. He started working later, often coming home well past dinner, brushing off her questions with vague excuses. He angled his laptop away during Zoom calls. His phone, once carelessly left on the kitchen counter, now never left his pocket. Then came the new credit card, discovered when Prudence sorted tax documents. It was tied to their joint account, yet she'd never seen it. "It's for work," he said with a shrug. "Nothing to worry about." And still, Prudence gave him the benefit of the doubt. But the signs continued to mount. Locked phones, a P.O. box address, cash withdrawals just shy of red-flagging thresholds. He called it liquidity for investments. She called it a red flag. Still, she waited, watched. Then came the moment everything changed. A security alert pinged her phone at 4:13 a.m. She opened the app to see Mark, in their home office, digging through her private drawers. In the soft blue glow of the desk lamp, he was carefully photographing her bank documents, logging details, and handwritten notes in her personal shorthand. That was the moment the professional became personal. She didn't scream or cry. She saved the footage. And then she began planning, not for retirement, but for battle. For most of their marriage, Prudence believed she and Mark had struck a rare balance. He came from wealth, raised in a family that never worried about bills, budgets, or balancing checkbooks. His parents vacationed in Europe, leased luxury cars, and treated money as limitless. Mark had inherited that ease, but to his credit, he'd built a respectable career in financial technology. Prudence, who came from a world of frugality and caution, admired his drive. even if she never quite understood his casual attitude toward spending. She tolerated his indulgences, the custom espresso machine, the vintage motorcycle, the smart home gadgets, because they could afford them. He wasn't reckless, just comfortable, and comfortable was something she had learned to make peace with. But something shifted 6 months ago. Mark's tone turned sharper when she asked about their budget. He brushed off her questions with airy explanations: investment opportunities, business expenses, work reimbursements. When she raised concerns about the new credit card she hadn't seen before, he laughed it off. "You're overthinking it," he said. "That's what you do." His words weren't cruel, but they cut deeper than he realized. Then came the withdrawals. $500 here, $700 there, always below the alert threshold, always unaccounted for. Mark said it was for liquidity, quick access for deals. But Prudence had managed corporate audits for years. She knew those numbers weren't random. They were strategic, designed not to trigger attention. When she mentioned the discrepancies, he turned cold. "After 15 years, I think I've earned a little privacy," he snapped. "You don't need to control everything." It stung. Because she wasn't trying to control, it was about transparency. A marriage built on respect shouldn't have secrets. But the more she pressed, the more he recoiled. And still, Prudence wanted to believe it was something simple: stress, a midlife itch, maybe even a health scare he hadn't shared, something fixable, something human. But then came the P.O. box, the locked phone, the diverted mail. The pattern was unmistakable. So she did what she always did when a situation smelled wrong. She took action. She installed a night vision security system under the guise of increased break-ins in the neighborhood. Mark didn't object. He barely noticed. But the system worked perfectly. What it captured shattered her denial. At 4:13 a.m., Mark stood in the glow of her desk lamp, flipping through her personal documents, her savings statements, account numbers, written codes. He photographed everything with his phone, methodical and unhurried. Not the actions of a desperate man, but of one who thought he had time. Access, a guarantee. Prudence watched that footage 3 times. She didn't cry. She didn't confront. She cataloged. She backed up the video, printed stills, took notes. And then she made a new plan. This was no longer a marriage. It was a risk scenario. Her voice plays in her mind, firm and resolute. He thought our joint accounts were the jackpot. He didn't know the real wealth was always protected. Because now, Prudence wasn't managing a partnership. She was containing a threat. The morning after watching Mark steal her financial information, Prudence Westfield sat at her desk and made 2 calls. The first was to Diane Blackwood, a forensic accountant she'd partnered with on multiple fraud investigations. The second was to Jonathan Lewis, a financial crimes attorney known for his precision and discretion. Neither was surprised by her situation. Financial betrayal between spouses is more common than people admit, Diane told her. Time Trickle tented. You're lucky. You caught it early, and you're equipped to fight back. Under their guidance, Prudence created a multi-seasons strategy. First, she secured her actual assets. She moved the majority of her funds to new banks under newly established trusts. She froze her credit to prevent new lines from being opened in her name. She updated all passwords and set up biometric verification on every device. Every critical financial document, from retirement plans to property deeds, was placed in a safe deposit box Mark couldn't access, at a bank he didn't even know she used. Then came the decoy plan. With Diane's help, Prudence opened dummy accounts containing modest but believable sums. She used her usual shorthand and labeling to make them look authentic. She even left account information casually accessible, just enough to tempt someone who thought they were being clever. Think of it like bait in a trap, Jonathan said. He'll go for what he thinks is low-hanging fruit. For the next 2 weeks, Prudence maintained her usual routine. She came puthampled at dinner, kissed Mark goodbye in the mornings, smiled politely during their empty conversations. But behind the scenes, she was tracking every move. She installed new monitoring software, cross-referenced transaction logs, and noted every unexplained purchase. "You can't accuse someone of theft," Jonathan had said, "unless you can prove they took what wasn't theirs." And so she waited. It didn't take long. The first hit came on a Thursday. A $3,200.00 charge appeared on one of the decoy credit cards. It was a reservation at a luxury resort in Napa Valley, booked under Mark's name. 2 guests. Her name was not among them. Prudence didn't confront him. She logged the transaction, downloaded the receipt, and added it to her growing evidence file. Over the following days, more charges followed. Designer clothes, electronics, first-class airline tickets, always through the same dummy account, always traceable. "I thought he was bleeding me dry," she whispered one night, watching his latest charge post. But he was just painting himself into a corner. Every transaction was another thread in a web she was quietly weaving. Every lie he told became another data point, another piece of proof. The old Prudence might have cried, raged, begged for answers. But this version was calculating, calm, and entirely in control. "I used to build safety plans for Fortune 500 companies," she told Diane during a check-in call. "Now I'm building one for my own life." Because this wasn't just about protecting her finances, it was about reclaiming her future. One move, one step, one receipt at a time. 3 weeks after the Napa charge, Prudence received the alert she had been dreading and expecting. A login attempt on her decoy savings account was followed by a transfer with no exemption to an unfamiliar routing number. She froze, not because she was afraid, but because she knew exactly what that meant. Mark had officially crossed the final line. He wasn't just testing boundaries or dipping his toe into deception. He was stealing. And he wasn't done. Over the next 10 days, she watched as more charges piled up. $122,000, 0 cents in electronics from high-end brands, $8,500, 0 cents at boutique clothing stores, $3,500, 0 cents on AirLogic. This wasn't strategic spending, it was liquidation, a fire sale, like he was preparing to disappear. Diane reviewed the account activity with her, and her tone was clear. "He's draining what he thinks is everything. This is panic spending. He's scared." But of what? Jonathan had his own theory. He's either preparing to run or has a pressing reason to get the money out now. Find the trigger, and you'll know exactly how far he's willing to go. That night, Prudence stayed up, combing through their home office. She wasn't even sure what she was looking for. Just something, anything, that would explain why Mark had turned from inattentive to criminal. She almost missed the folder. It was tucked behind a row of books she rarely touched. When she pulled it out, her breath caught. Inside were medical records, lab reports, biopsy results, insurance correspondence. All of it detailed a rare form of lymphoma, aggressive, expensive to treat, and diagnosed 6 months earlier. The dates matched exactly when Mark's behavior started to shift. There were treatment estimates, insurance denials, and even notes from a consultation about an experimental therapy. The out-of-pocket projection was over $200,000, 0 cents. He had cancer. He was sick. And he hadn't said a word. Her first reaction wasn't even anger. It was disbelief. After 15 years of marriage, he hadn't trusted her with something this monumental. Instead, he'd lied, stolen, and planned to fund his recovery through deception. The depth of the betrayal made her stomach turn. Prudence called his clinic the next morning, posing as his insurance coordinator. The receptionist was helpful and chatty. "Oh yes, Mr. Westfield's doing much better. His last scan was encouraging, and he's scheduled to begin the experimental treatment next month." Then came the line that made everything inside her freeze. He said financing wouldn't be an issue. Of course it wouldn't. He thought he'd gotten away with it. Later that night, as she sat in her kitchen, staring at the evidence, the final blow arrived. Her private investigator sent the report from the Napa trip, hotel records, dinner reservations, travel confirmations, all in Mark's name. But the second guest wasn't a medical provider or support specialist. It was Vanessa Daniels, his 29-year-old executive assistant. They'd been traveling together for months. The photos in the report showed them holding hands, kissing by a pool, laughing over champagne. Vanessa wasn't helping him fight cancer. She was helping him celebrate a life financed by theft. Everything shifted in that moment. The sympathy she'd felt evaporated. He hadn't just lied for treatment. He'd stolen for luxury. He'd cheated with someone half her age while convincing her to trust him. Her voice was steady when she called Diane. We go forward. No hesitation. 'Cause now she knew. The disease may have been real, but the deception ran deeper. He lied for treatment, then stole for pleasure. Prudence didn't sleep the night she got the photos of Mark and Vanessa. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She planned. By morning, everything was ready. The evidence had been compiled, categorized, and labeled. Every charge, every login, every withdrawal, every kiss caught by the investigator's lens. The only thing left was timing. She wouldn't just confront him. She would deliver the full weight of the truth at the exact moment it would crush his confidence. That opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 days later, she received a security alert. Mark had just used one of the decoy credit cards to purchase nearly $9,000, 0 cents in electronics at a premium store just 15 minutes away. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. It was arrogance, or maybe desperation. Either way, it was the sign she'd been waiting for. Prudence stayed home from work that afternoon. She placed the folder of evidence on the coffee table, neat and waiting. Then she sat in the living room, composed, her phone nearby and her heart steady. At 2:37 p.m., she heard the front door open. Mark entered with the swagger of someone who believed he had won. He didn't notice her at first, too busy admiring his new gadgets. But when he turned and saw her sitting there, expression unreadable, he stopped cold. "You're home early," he said, recovering quickly. "Are you?" she replied, nodding toward the shopping bags. "Nice things." He flashed a smile. "Just some upgrades for my office. You know how the business is booming." "My money?" she asked. His eyes flickered, then steadied. "What are you talking about?" "You used the card linked to the decoy account," she said evenly. "The one I created after I caught you photographing my banking information at 4 a.m. You remember that night, don't you?" His face paled. "You've been spying on me?" "Preempting her," she said calmly. "I've been protecting myself. Something you made necessary." He opened his mouth, but she continued. "I know about the account transfers, the credit cards, the fake emails, the P.O. box, the medical records, the treatment, the insurance denials, the out-of-packet projections. I even know about Vanessa." The silence that followed was suffocating. "I'm sick," he whispered, trying to pivot. "You don't understand. I needed the money for treatment." "You needed the money for 5-star resorts," she replied. "For designer clothes. For her." He sank into the nearest chair. "You set me up." "I gave you chances," she corrected. "You made choices." She handed him the folder. "Inside, you'll find everything: bank statements, security footage, transfer records, photos, reservations, and divorce papers." Mark didn't touch it. "You'll sign them," she said, her voice unshakable. "Or I send this folder to the police, the district attorney, and your employer." He finally picked it up, flipping through the pages with increasing dread. "It's no alimony, no access to my assets. You keep what's yours, I keep what's mine." His voice cracked. "You moved everything." "Yes," she said. "The accounts you drained were decoys. 5% of my net worth. My real investments are protected, always have been." His head dropped into his hands. "And if I don't sign?" he asked. "Then I prosecute," she replied. "Fraud, identity theft, financial abuse, adultery. The full list." Mark sat in silence for a long time. Then, with a shaking hand, he picked up the pen. 1 month later, Prudence sat in her attorney's office as Jonathan handed her the final divorce papers. No contest. No delay. Mark had vacated the house without drama. He knew there was nothing left to fight for. "You did everything right," Jonathan said. "You built your defense like a fortress." "Like I always do," she replied. As she left his office, her phone buzzed with a news alert. Mark's former company was under investigation for internal fraud. His name was one of the first listed. Financial misconduct, conflict of interest, termination effective immediately. Prudence didn't feel joy. She felt relief. Mark had played a long game of lies, but she had played for keeps. Prudence didn't look back when she sold the house. The once warm walls had turned into echoes of betrayal, and she had no desire to live among ghosts. Instead, she accepted the promotion she'd been offered years ago by a respected firm in Portland, an offer she'd declined at the time because Mark didn't want to relocate. Now, with nothing holding her back, she made the move with full clarity and zero regret. The divorce had finalized quietly. Her name was cleared, her accounts untouched. Her credit had been swiftly restored thanks to early fraud alerts and airtight documentation. Her reputation, if anything, was stronger. Her meticulous defense had caught the attention of not only her clients, but also financial institutions who now reached out for insight, advice, and collaboration. Within months, Prudence launched a small workshop called Fraud Proof. It started as a side project, a way to empower women through the lessons she'd learned the hard way. But it grew fast. What began as a dozen women in a local library conference room expanded into packed seminars, virtual courses, and even insurance companies looking to educate their clients. She taught them how to recognize financial red flags in relationships, how to build independent portfolios, and how to secure digital information before trust is broken. She didn't do it for revenge. She did it for herself, and for every woman who had been told, "You don't need to worry about that, let me handle it." Prudence showed them how to handle it themselves. Her mother, who had once lost everything in the 2008 financial crisis and spent years rebuilding after her own husband's missteps, sat front row at Prudence's first major keynote. When the applause filled the auditorium, her mother rose to her feet first. Tears in her eyes, pride in her heart. "You made sure no one could do to you what was done to me," her mother said afterward, holding her daughter's hand. "And now you're helping others do the same." That's the kind of legacy we should all be proud of. Prudence didn't rush into dating again. She had no appetite for romantic entanglements, not yet. She didn't need to prove her worth to anyone or be part of a couple to feel complete. For the first time in a long time, she was truly at peace in her own company. There was power in that silence, confidence in that solitude. She bought a modern condo in Portland with views of the river and crisp morning light. She decorated it herself, clean lines, soft textures, and art that made her feel expansive. Every item inside was chosen intentionally, paid for in full, and belonged to her alone. No shared passwords, no locked phones, no whispered lies. She woke each morning with a sense of clarity. Her past didn't haunt her, it educated her. And now, it empowered others. She wasn't just healed, she was evolved. Stronger. Sharper. Whole. She didn't lose a husband, she shed a liability. And what remained was everything worth protecting. On the 1-year anniversary of discovering that 4 a.m. security footage, Prudence Westfield sat alone in her Portland condo, the city lights reflecting off the water outside her window. She lit a single candle, not for sorrow, not for grief, but for closure. Cat, Oliver, curled contentedly at her feet, unaware of the weight the day carried. She reached for her journal, its leather cover worn from a year of scribbled thoughts, fears, lessons, and victories. The pen moved across the page slowly, each word deliberate. He stole access to my accounts, but I reclaimed access to myself. She paused, staring at the sentence. Then she underlined it. Across the room sat a file drawer labeled in neat handwriting, "Never again." Inside were the remnants of a betrayal she no longer carried emotionally, only factually. The printed photos from Napa, the forged transfer requests, the investigator's timeline of deception. She didn't keep them for vengeance or masochism. She kept them for memory. Proof of her instincts. Evidence of her strength. Later that evening, Prudence stood in a private conference room at a women's wealth seminar, facing 30 quietly powerful women from all walks of life. Doctors, teachers, entrepreneurs, and mothers. Some were newly divorced, some still deciding, others simply there to protect what was theirs. Prudence shared her story not as a victim, but as a strategist. She spoke about building dual account systems, setting traps, protecting intellectual property, and recognizing financial red flags before they erupted into disasters. But she also spoke about healing, about the emotional damage that comes from trusting someone who sees you not as a partner, but as a bank. She acknowledged the shame, the self-doubt, and the anger. And she dismantled them piece by piece, reminding the women that what was stolen can be rebuilt, stronger, smarter, and protected by knowledge. As her presentation ended, she looked out across the room. Some nodded. Others wiped away silent tears. Many clutched notebooks full of scribbled ideas and action steps. Prudence offered a calm, final thought. "I best revenge," she said softly. "Isn't destruction, it's construction. Build so strong that no one can steal it again." The room didn't erupt in loud applause. Instead, it pulsed with something deeper. Quiet, firm, powerful affirmation. The kind of applause that doesn't fade. The kind that lingers in hearts. That night, Prudence returned home. She washed her face, fed Oliver, and climbed into her bed with clean sheets and an uncluttered mind. For the first time in years, she fell asleep without rehearsing contingencies, without cataloging risks, without bracing for betrayal. She had survived. She had adapted. And now, she was thriving. Beneath the candle's faint glow, her world no longer felt cracked or fragile. It felt earned. Because it was. He said he needed access. What he really needed was accountability. He said he was sick, but he never said he was dishonest. He didn't just lie to me. He tried to erase me from the financial life I built with my own hands, one calculated step at a time. He used my trust like currency. But I invested in myself, and that paid dividends. My name is Prudence Westfield. I was married to a man who turned financial abuse into performance art, but I turned his betrayal into my greatest security plan. He didn't just steal money. He tried to steal my stability, my peace, my future. But I didn't collapse. I recalculated. I locked down what mattered, set up decoys, built a firewall around my soul, and when the moment came, I collected every receipt. I didn't just survive his storm. I monetized it. If you've ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, let this remind you. A locked drawer can save a fortune. A quiet suspicion can uncover a secret life. And a locked heart? It can open again, on your terms. Let this be your proof that protecting yourself isn't cold, it's powerful. It's love in its highest form. Love for your own future. Subscribe to Veiled Fury for more stories where betrayal becomes blueprint and women turn devastation into design. Because when trust is broken, strategy steps in. And the smartest revenge? It always earns interest.